Hello and welcome to a Talmud Israeli production. Today we'll review the highlights of this week's course of Daf Yomi study, Masechet Yoma, pages 14 through 20. Daf Yudal, 14. The Gemara questions whether or not a Kohen Gadol whose wife dies, whether or not that Kohen Gadol is actually an onin in a situation where the wife was provisionally divorced on Yom Kippur. Why should there be a status of aninut, a type of mourning, if in fact the Kohen had formally divorced his wife? The Gemara responds, even though technical aninut would not come into effect if in fact the Kohen had divorced his wife previously, nonetheless he is preoccupied with his bereavement because in fact he loved his wife and was married to her for many years and is sad that she is gone. And Rashi explains, when it comes to eating sacrificial meat, one must do so in a state of simcha, of joy. And even in the absence of technical aninut, the Kohen Gadol could not do that because he's preoccupied with his bereavement over the loss of a beloved spouse. Tedvav, 15. Arba l'shachot hayulul beit hamoked. The chamber of the fire, the hall of fire, had four suites, four subcomponents to the room. Like four little suites that open up into a banquet hall. Two out of the four were located in the sanctified portions of the courtyard, and two of the four were located beyond the sanctified portions. And there were these wooden posts, like a fence, that separated the section of the Beit HaMoked, which was in the Azara, and the section of the Beit HaMoked, which was not in the Azara, but rather was on Har HaBayit. Tedzayin, 16. Kol ha'azara hayta orach 187 min hamizrach lamarav. That from an east-west standpoint, the temple courtyard was 187 cubits long. And there are subdivisions of that 187, which we will now explain. Makom drisat reglei Yisrael achat esrei ama. That the easternmost portion of the courtyard was the area where the non-Kohanim, the Israelites, were allowed to walk, and that was 11 cubits, 11 amot wide, east to west. Then, going further west, Makom drisat reglei Kohanim achat esrei ama. The next 11 cubits were for the Kohanim. They could walk around there. Well, 11 plus 11 is 22. Then, Mizbeach 32. The altar was itself 32 cubits wide. So 32 plus 22 is 54. Beinulam la Mizbeach 22. Between the altar and the antechamber was another 22 cubits. 54 plus 22 is 76. Heichal mea ama. The building of the sanctuary was itself 100 cubits from east to west, and 76 plus 100 is 176. And there was an 11 amma wide area behind the building where hardly anybody ever went, and 176 plus 11 is 187. Okay. Ketzad, page 17, Yud Zayin. Ketzad notel chelek barosh. How is it that the Kohen Gadol can take on his own prerogative, whatever portion of the sacrificial meat he wants to eat, and whatever service he would like to perform? So, Omer chatat zuan yochel, Ashem zuan yochel. If he says, I want to eat the meat of that sin offering, he gets to eat it. I want to eat the meat of that guilt offering, he gets to eat it. He need not divide it along an equitable line with those other Kohanim serving in the temple at that time. Then, he can take one out of the two loaves of bread from Shavuot, and he can take from the showbread 4 or 5 out of the showbread. How many showbread are there? 12. Well, 2 of them are unavailable because they're given to the incoming mishmar that is given reward for locking the gates at night, so there is a remaining 10. Of the 10, the Kohen Gadol is able to take half, or at least so says Rebbe. The other Tanoim say he has to take a little bit less than half, and so he'll get 4 loaves. So it's a machloket tanim whether he gets 4 out of, or 5 if he wants to take a maximal portion of the showbread. Yurchet, Daf 18. Im haya chacham doresh. On the night of Yom Kippur, we want the Kohen Gadol to stay awake all night so he doesn't have a nocturnal emission. Well, what do you do when you're awake all night? So you should study Torah. If he's a scholar, he should give a lecture. And if he's not a scholar, then he should listen to other scholars give a lecture of a halachic nature. If he's regular to read the Bible, meaning he's accustomed to reading out of the Tanakh, then let him read. And if he's not accustomed to reading out of the Bible, then others will read in front of him. And what would they read from? Which books of the Bible? Eov, Job, Ezra, Divrei Yavim, Chronicles. So, storytelling books of the Bible. Many times I read the book of Daniel. So why is it that storybooks are being read as opposed to legal sections of the Tanakh? The answer is simple. Legal sections will put a person to sleep, whereas narrative sections will keep people awake. Why the book of Daniel? Because the book of Daniel is written in Aramaic mostly, and some of these Kohanim Gedolim did not fully understand Hebrew. They were Amaratzim, they were basically unlettered Jews, some of them in the Second Temple time. And so therefore it was necessary to read a book that's in the vernacular. Yudtet, 19. After requiring the Kohen Gadol to take a solemn oath that he will adhere to the instructions of the court and perform the Ketoret in the manner of the Prushim and not in the manner of the Tzedukim, the Pharisees and not the Sadducees, so the court turns away and cries, and the Kohen Gadol turns away and cries. Why do they turn away and cry? Because the Kohen Gadol, he's upset that maybe he meant no harm. He was not going to do anything wrong. He was falsely accused of, or potentially accused of committing a sectarian heresy. Why does the court turn away and cry? Because they don't want to be guilty of falsely accusing an innocent man. And if you falsely accuse an innocent man, lo kebegufo, hachoshed biksharim, lo kebegufo. If you falsely accuse someone who is innocent, you will have bodily harm. Daf Chaf. B'chol yom, every day, the ceremony of the lifting of the ash from the outer altar was done around the time of the crowing of the rooster, basically the beginning of the day, crack of dawn. However, on Yom Kippur, it was done much earlier. It was done at midnight. Why? To give time for the Kohen Gadol to rest, to relax in between that service and his full day of activities. And on the pilgrimage festivals, Meshmer Rishona, the removal of the ash happened after the first third of the night, meaning relatively early, or even earlier than on Yom Kippur. And on the holidays and the pilgrimage festivals, by the time the rooster crowed, the whole courtyard would be full of Israelites who had come on pilgrimage to be at the temple, to offer their sacrifices, and to have an encounter with Hashem. Everyone have a great week.